Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, May 21st, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Mark Joseph Stern, senior writer at Slate, to catch us up on the Supreme Court decisions about a congressional district in Louisiana and how the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau still exists. And also an update on your favorite January 6th fan, who happens to also be a Supreme Court justice. Meanwhile, as Biden decries the ICC, France, Belgium, and Slovenia support the ICC's chief prosecutor bid for war crime warrants from both Israel and Hamas leaders.
France is Hamas now.
And as aid piles up outside of Gaza at the Rafah Gate, new reporting on how police and military are helping those thug settlers attack aid vehicles. And as Trump advisors meet with Netanyahu, new poll says conditioning aid to Israel would help Biden's numbers in swing states. Israel shuts down AP, that's the Associated Press, operations and live feed looking into Gaza because apparently Al Jazeera uses the footage. The defense rests in Donald Trump's criminal trial. The jury will be back in 1 week to begin deliberations. Meanwhile, primary day in Oregon, Kentucky, Georgia, Idaho, and a California special election to replace Kevin McCarthy. Abortion rights referendum appears to qualify for the ballot in Nevada. Biden and the Senate on the brink of confirming 200th federal justice, or I should say judge, topping Donald Trump's tally, except, of course, on that Supreme Court. Trump's social media company has $770,000 revenue in Q1 and loses $325 million.
Oh, wow. So that valuation wasn't exactly on the up and up?
I think there's a lot more that's not on the up and up. We'll talk about that in a moment. And lastly, good governance at its best. A City Hall aide is cooperating with FBI's Adams investigation. And I should say that City Hall aide is a former aide to Mayor Adams. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is
Newsday Tuesday.
Newsday Tuesday. Of course, we're in Supreme Court season, and so we're going to be doing a lot of that over the next 6 weeks, I would say. So Mark Joseph Stern will be here, and we'll probably have an opportunity to talk about a couple of stories. I don't have much to say about this Trump, these numbers coming out of Truth Social. But I want everybody, everybody's being distracted by the fact that it's running a deficit of $300 and approximately $24 million a quarter.
We're going to turn it around.
Now, put that aside for a moment and try and imagine what costs $325 million every 4 months when you're operating a website.
A blog, basically. It's
The
a glorified
moderators.
personal blog for Donald Trump.
I am sort of amazed. I haven't seen anybody say this on Twitter. I am just sort of shocked that we're not like, but I got to think that there's about a dozen reporters right now trying to figure out how Donald Trump is laundering money through Truth Social into his defense attorneys.
We're working on the algorithm.
I mean, I would bet that it is like either he pays himself $300 million a quarter.
Yeah.
Or they're just charging this all to legal fees, which he probably has. But this is just bizarre.
It is.
Like, what possibly could be costing that? I mean, first of all, there's about 50 people using it. But even if you're like, well, we got to prepare if 10 million or 50 million or 100 million people use it, we've got to buy a lot of servers. But they've been operating for a long time. What is it? The electricity bill?
I mean, he went public, I would say, was it right after the judgment, the civil fraud judgment, or around then? I know it was in late March, I think, when they decided to go public. But like, I think part of the reticence to acknowledge it is that then you acknowledge inherently some of these IPOs that are going public are there just to basically patch up already existing losses and fundraise in kind of a fraudulent way.
I mean, maybe people were saying that valuation was bad, but this is just simply like this is operating costs.
How do you burn that money?
How do you burn through that kind of money on that type of website? I mean,
Got a special money kerosene.
For $325 million a quarter,
That's tough.
you could operate like a major car company.
Right.
I don't know, you could have your own factory, multiple factories. Like I can't even imagine. I can't even begin to imagine what could possibly be cost unless you have 300 employees and you pay them $1 million a year. But no, even then you'd still have like another $100 million left over. I mean, we're talking about $1.2 billion.
We should ask like Digby or Atrius what their operating costs are for their blog. Do you think that they're running losses of hundreds of millions of dollars a quarter? I mean, like that's what True Social is. I know there are a few MAGA freaks that post on there too, but it's basically Trump's website.
It's just impossible to imagine. And it seems like they're, if I remember correctly from their losses before, it seems like their operating costs have increased by like 10 times.
I'd be curious to
bizarre.
see if that increase correlates with Donald Trump's like continued legal woes.
Oh, I would imagine that. I mean, if it's a public company now, then I mean they took it public, right?
Yes,
that IPO.
in March.
And so I would imagine they're going to have to report this.
Well, at the end of Q2, we maybe will have a little more information.
I mean, maybe they somehow deferred all of their expenses into this. I don't know.
Nobody's even
I don't
on
know
this
enough
stupid
about
website except for me. So
that's crazy. I mean, this is someone just wrote like, didn't they only make $2 million and spend $50 million last quarter? Now they're public, the SEC needs to look into this, says Dragon Rider. Yeah, I mean, if I was...
come on. Are you accusing Trump of running a scam?
I know, that would be crazy.
yeah, come on.
All right, let's get into this. A reminder yesterday, Karim Khan, the ICC prosecutor, was going to essentially apply to ICC judges for these warrants for war crimes against Netanyahu and Gallant, and then from Hamas, Sinwar, and two other Hamas officials. And the idea that now France, Belgium, and Slovenia have come out in support of this. And as far as I can tell, only the United States is the only country that has come actively out against support of this. Now, Germany apparently just added its support for the ICC, but not necessarily these warrants. But this is a big deal. Here is Israeli journalist and author Gideon Levy offering his opinion on this warrant announcement.
Going forward, Israel is not a signatory of the Rome Statute. You've heard from U.S. leaders writing a letter, actually, pressuring the ICC. So we're still in the early phases. There is a request for arrest warrants. They haven't been issued yet. Do you think they are going to be issued, and can they be enforced?
I don't know if they can be enforced, but you cannot underestimate the effects. The fact that an Israeli prime minister will or might become wanted in all kinds of corners of the world and will be prevented of traveling must have an effect. It's unprecedented. It was never the case, for sure not in a country which is supposed to be a democracy, which considers itself as a democracy. And you have to see the overall picture. It's not one case. It's an overall picture in which the world, the entire world, more and more so, more loudly and more clearly tells Israel, enough is enough. We had enough with you.
I think this is going to have also, I would imagine, a significant impact on the Israeli population, where they begin to wonder, wait, why is this happening? My understanding is there's a couple 100,000 people who have been protesting over the past weekend, calling for both a deal to bring home the hostages and increasingly to end the war. I would imagine that's going to add fuel to that fire. Here is Karim Khan on with CNN's Christian Amanpour with some stories about how certain top leaders perceive the ICC.
Lindsey Graham is who people suspect.
To distinguished members on the Hill and to the administration that Rome Statute values are quintessential American values. It's against bullying. It's against the untrammeled power against the most vulnerable. It's the rights and the dignity of the individual. It's the protection of babies. I mean, these are fundamental American values that should engender bipartisan support. Now, of course, this situation, unfortunately, lies on the San Andreas fault of international politics and strategic interests. And of course, I've had some elected leaders speak to me and be very blunt. This court is built for Africa and for thugs like Putin, was what one senior leader told me. We don't view it like that. This court is the legacy of Nuremberg. This court is a sad indictment of humanity. This court should be the triumph of law over power and brute force. Grab what you can, take what you want, do what you will. And we're going to simply be, we're not going to be dissuaded by threats or any other activities, because in the end, we have to fulfill our responsibilities as prosecutors, as the men and women of the office, as judges, as the registry, to something bigger than ourselves, which is the fidelity to justice. And we're not going to be swayed by the different types of threats, some of which are public and some maybe are not.
You mentioned impressive stuff, and it makes you understand why, when he was appointed in 2021, as reported by the Times of Israel, hat tip, of course, to Atrios at the blog Eschaton, UK's Karim Khan, elected the next ICC prosecutor, will replace controversial Ben Suda, who was the previous ICC prosecutor, chief prosecutor. This is back in 2021. And the subtitle in this Times of Israel headline, said to be Israel's preferred candidate.
Whoops.
British lawyer will likely decide whether to move ahead with planned probe of alleged Israeli Hamas war crimes. That's back in 2021. Which I don't really understand, because I thought this all started October 7th in 2023, but I guess not. Anyways, the point being that very hard to now come out and criticize Karim Khan with all of this contemporaneous reporting in 2021 that he was Israel's guy.
Well, Biden will try.
Bibi called him one of the great anti-Semites in history because of what happened.
I mean, it's continuing to fall on deaf ears, but you see, I guess, how the United States views these international bodies like the ICC or the ICJ that were supposedly founded in the wake of World War II to prevent the genocide that we saw in the Holocaust and the Shoah. And what has been like implicit in the fact, because the United States and other Western powers helped construct these, is that it applies to everybody else and to state actors that we don't like, but not to us. And it's so refreshing to see that, like, basically be rebuked in such a public way.
Aired in public. Let the world hear that. Like, that is a huge thing. Like, the way that's going to be met around the world, that was explicitly told to Karim Khan that this is meant for Africa, I think can't be underestimated.
Yeah, I mean, I think from his perspective, he's just got his job to do, and I think even the idea that he would have revealed that, I think, was pretty significant, frankly. He's got a job to do. He doesn't want to get sidelined by getting into a pissing match with Lindsey Graham. That was just his way of saying, this is what they're saying to me, and I'm not afraid to articulate it, and don't. You're done.
Hey, hit Lindsey Graham with obstruction charges. I
wonder, that would actually be awesome.
Be great.
Yeah.
All right. In a moment, we're going to be talking to Mark Joseph Stern, senior writer at Slate, about what's happening with the Supreme Court. In the meantime, a couple words from our sponsors. This is an easy one for me. Like, I don't even have to. If you've watched this show, you see me at least once or twice a show. I try and do it discreetly, but I don't. I'm not that successful. Pouring myself something out of this glass bottle. It's an old milk bottle, and it is always full of liquid IV. And now that it's summertime, when you really need hydration every day, and I'm playing a little softball these days, I'm not just drinking it during the show. I'm drinking it when I'm out and about doing stuff. Liquid IV hydrates you with benefits like electrolytes, with essential items, and clinically tested nutrients. It has 3 times the electrolytes of leading sports drink, plus 8 vitamins and nutrients in a single stick. I got them over there. I don't have the packets over here. It's clear why Liquid IV is the #1 powdered hydration brand in America. I take these, well, obviously I drink them every day, but I take them when I'm traveling on the plane. I'll have some on the plane to keep myself from getting dehydrated on the plane. I'll have it when I'm, maybe I've had a little, I've overindulged. They're great. And the great thing about Liquid IV now, this is even greater. I mean, I've been, drinking this stuff now for, I feel like 6-7 years. Sugar-free flavors are now here. They got white peach, which is what I've been on a little jag for, I haven't tried that 2 months.
Yet. Sounds good.
Green grape, raspberry melon, which I have not tried, and lemon lime, which I have tried. I think we're due to get some raspberry melon around here. Liquid IV runs on LIV Hydroscience, which is a science-backed formula that's an optimized ratio of electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients to turn ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. Tear, pour, live more. 1 stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates you better than water alone. Turn your ordinary water into extraordinary hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com. Use the code MajorityRep at checkout. Not Majority Report. Majority Rep at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MajorityRep at liquidiv.com. Also, sponsoring the program today, I've told this story before when I grew a beard during the pandemic. I decided I didn't want to use my the razor that we were promoting anymore because subscription. I didn't need to be stuck in a subscription, and I'm trying to make less plastic waste. And bingo bango, about a year later, we got lucky. Henson Shaving came around. Henson Shaving is a family-owned aerospace parts manufacturer from Canada that has made parts for the International Space Station, Mars rover, and now they're bringing precision engineering to your shaving experience. And it turns out razor blades are like diving boards. The longer the board, the more the wobble. The more wobble, the more nicks, cuts, and scrapes. So it turns out a bad shave is not a blade problem. It's an extension problem. And Henson, because they were making stuff for the space station, has aerospace grade computer numerical something C control machines. And they make metal razors that extend just 0.0013 inches off of the blade, basically less than the thickness of a human hair. That means a secure and stable shave every time because your blade is secure and stable. And they got these channels here to evacuate the shaving cream. And here's the thing. This is why I mentioned they're from Canada, because Henson Shaving wants to be the best razor, not the best razor business. That is a distinctly not American perspective. That's why only a Canadian, that's my theory.
I can't believe
only a
how
Canadian
good the
could
deal
do
is.
this.
Yeah.
Because there's no plastic, there's no subscriptions, there's no proprietary blades, there is no planned obsolescence. You buy this razor one time, and it really feels nice in your hand. I also have a black one, and they have another model, I think, as well. Henson razor works with dual edge blades, gives you that old school shave with the benefits of new school tech. Once you own a Henson razor, it's only $3 to $5 per year to continue shaving. So I got news for you. Father's Day is coming up. Give your dad a gift that will literally last a lifetime. It is time to say goodbye to subscriptions and yes to a razor that you will have literally forever. I mean, until you die. And then maybe you hand it down to your kid. Visit hensonshaving.com/majority. Pick the razor for you and then use the code majority. You'll get 2 years worth of blades free with your razor. You just got to add them into 100 blades, add them into your cart, and they'll be free. That's 100 free blades when you head to Henson Shaving, HENSONSHAVING, hensonshaving.com/majority. Use the code majority, and you'll be all set. Check it out. You will not be disappointed. All right, quick break. And when we come back, we'll be talking to Mark Joseph Stern. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Real pleasure to welcome back to the program Mark Joseph Stern, senior writer at Slate. Mark, welcome back on a week. I should just note that we're probably going to see the confirmation of the 200th member of the federal judiciary, which is about 7 more than Donald Trump had. Of course, Donald Trump had 3 Supreme Court justices to appoint, and Joe Biden only 1. But at the very least, there's been some balance. The Biden administration has done a much better job with judges than the Obama administration did. But yet, here we are.
Definitely better than the Obama administration. The Biden administration has not gotten as many judges on the courts of appeals yet, which is an issue because they are so powerful and decide the majority of cases. You know, most cases don't even get to the Supreme Court. But that's in part because a lot of conservative judges are timing their retirements more strategically than left-leaning judges. And Trump got to flip a number of seats because left-leaning judges on the courts of appeals stepped down to often take big law firm jobs because they wanted to put their kids through school. And conservative judges don't do that under Democratic presidents.
I think it's just a little bit more than just putting them through school. I have a feeling when you get those jobs, you're also getting a pool and more. But be that as it may. And also, I got to say, it's also a function of the types of people who were chosen to be judges under the Obama administration, or frankly, in those prior Democratic administrations, a lot of corporate judges.
Absolutely. A lot of corporate judges, a lot of prosecutors who all sort of expected to be making the big bucks at this stage in their lives. And of course, federal judges make a few $100,000, not the millions that a law firm partner does. And so I agree, this was a huge problem with a lot of Obama's appointees. You know, some of them held out till Biden and stepped down in their 50s under Biden, which is fine. But I think we'll see a very different pattern with some of Biden's judges, most of Biden's judges, because when you're drawing from public defenders, civil rights attorneys, voting rights attorneys, these are folks who know how to make a good life with a few $100,000 a year in salary. They're not going to cut and run because they need an expansion of their house or another pool or whatever. And I'm optimistic that more of Biden's appointees will serve long terms and cling on under the next Republican president and make a stark distinction with some of Obama's rather corporate prosecutors.
Yep, I hope so too. All right. In the meantime, one thing, or at least one of the things that was good that came out of the Obama administration in the Dodd-Frank, which didn't really go far enough as far as some of us are concerned. But one of the good things that came out of it was the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was actually sort of like Elizabeth Warren's baby in some ways. And one of the things that was unique about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to insulate it from politics was to make sure that it was funded by fees it was collecting from financial service entities and through fines. And this was the grounds in which it was attacked. And it's been, what's amazing is I feel like this is such a repeat.
So it actually draws most of its money from the Federal Reserve, which itself collects money from interest on securities. So it also does collect, of course, fines and fees. That's its main enforcement mechanism. But yeah, I mean, the CFPB has been under assault since the day it was created, and the Supreme Court struck down a small part of the law that created it in 2020 by holding that the president can fire its director. As Elizabeth Warren created it, it was supposed to have one director who served a 5-year term, and the president couldn't fire the director unless they did something really, really bad. The Supreme Court struck down that protection, which ironically ended up benefiting Joe Biden more than anyone else because he was able to fire Trump's terrible CFPB director on day one and install progressives to lead it. But this is the other part of the attack, which is this idea that because the CFPB draws its money primarily from the Federal Reserve, it's unconstitutional. Now, just to hear that sentence, you might be scratching your head and be like, what could possibly be wrong with that? A bunch of payday lenders and their lawyers at Jones Day, the law firm, concocted this theory that federal programs and federal agencies have to be regularly funded by Congress in a bill that's stamped with the word appropriations. And that if Congress chooses to fund an agency any other way, including the way the CFPB is funded, it's unconstitutional and must be struck down in its entirety. And I just want to be clear, these groups, these litigants and their lawyers, they shopped this theory to 7 different courts, which all turned it down, basically laughed it out onto the street, before they landed their case at the Fifth Circuit and found a willing audience at the Fifth Circuit, which struck down the entire CFPB, which led to this decision. So it's another good example of how these litigants will just go shopping to court after court until they find one, usually the Fifth Circuit, that's crazy enough to bite. That's what happened with a lot of Joe Biden's vaccine mandates, and it's what happened here.
If someone was to do a word cloud of every conversation that we have had on this program for the past 4 years about legal cases, the biggest 2 words would be in huge bold Fifth Circuit. And
then administrative state after that.
Yes. And then Chevron, probably.
Yes.
Doing the Lord's work, trying to get people to care about the administrative state. I appreciate it.
Well, but the Fifth Circuit, I mean, this is so messed up. And then I guess the other one would be me mispronouncing that Judge Kaczynski or whatever his name is.
Kaczmarek, who is within the Fifth Circuit.
Within the Fifth Circuit.
There we go.
But before we get to just that one point, I just want to say the first thing that popped out for me, and I think Kagan ended up bringing this up, was that's how Social Security is funded. Like, Social Security is non-discretionary spending, which means that every year there is no word appropriations for Social Security because Congress does not appropriate money from the general budget to Social Security. It is its own self-funding mechanism. They may have to raise the taxes at one point to get it to refund the trust fund, but Social Security cannot add to the deficit. It is not part of the yearly budget, and that's like the half of the government.
So Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, pretty much every other financial regulator, including the Federal Reserve and the FDIC, a bunch of other agencies going back to pretty much the 1790s, all of them are funded in ways different from how the Fifth Circuit said everything has to be funded. The Fifth Circuit made up this theory out of whole cloth and essentially declared that trillions of dollars worth of spending and many, many, many parts of the government itself are simply unconstitutional and have to be struck down, sort of destroyed by judicial fiat. I think the good news is that the Supreme Court rejected that by a 7-2 vote. The bad news is that it even got to the Supreme Court in the first place because of the Fifth Circuit's total insanity and depravity. And of course, that 2 justices still saw fit to dissent and attempt to, we can talk about this, basically trigger a recession that would have destroyed the country.
I want to talk about that part of the 2, but walk us through, because maybe this is a good time to illustrate why the Fifth Circuit. Like, how does our federal judiciary system, like, how does the Supreme Court get cases? And also, what happened to the attempt to stop the judge shopping? I mean, I was under the impression that the federal judges had got together and said, we're going to stop this judge shopping thing. And then it turned out to be more of like, we think that people should stop judge shopping.
Yeah. So for your second question, that's basically what happened. There was a rebellion amongst the judges who like being shopped to, people like Matthew Kaczmarek, when the Federal Judicial Conference said we're going to curtail judge shopping. All of these guys in the Fifth Circuit and the district courts within the Fifth Circuit said, absolutely not. How dare you? This is outrageous. Did like a full court press. And so the Judicial Conference ended up sort of walking that back and urging individual courts to adopt these new guidelines, which many courts did not, including the Northern District of Texas, which is where Judge Kaczmarek and many other wackadoodles sit. And so we are still dealing with this problem. Of course, this case originated years ago, so it wouldn't have been directly affected by this. But there's more that the Supreme Court can do. And one thing it can do is, in cases like this one, add a note at the end saying, by the way, we see how egregiously engineered this case was to be placed before the Fifth Circuit for no reason. And part of our decision is rooted in our disgust with how the lower court here manipulated the rules to help the litigators. Of course, the Supreme Court didn't do that because they're still cowards and they're afraid to tackle this problem directly. But it's continuing to boil. And it's something worth keeping an eye on because the court does have other tools. And of course, Congress could step in at any time and fix this, but Republicans don't want it to.
Okay, so walk us through, for people to understand how our federal judiciary works, because I said 200 judges, you said not the circuit court because we were talking about the federal district courts. And what's the difference? Just walk us through the different hierarchies and how a case makes it to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, so for the vast majority of cases, a lawsuit or complaint is filed in a federal district court. The federal district judge in that court gets to oversee the case, issue a decision. In theory, cases are supposed to be randomly assigned to these judges. By law, in fact, cases are randomly assigned to one judge on the court. So even though it's called the Northern District of Texas, for instance, that's one court, it has a bunch of different judges who sit on it. But what these judges have done is put themselves in what are called single judge divisions. So they'll set themselves up in places like Amarillo, Texas, or Wichita Falls, Texas, where they are the only federal judge in that geographic area. And they will invite litigators to walk into their courthouse and file a case, which is then not randomly assigned to any judge within that district court, but assigned directly to them. That is what Matthew Kaczmarek keeps doing. He just recently, by the way, blocked the new law that Congress enacted and directed Biden to implement that closed the gun show loophole. So this is still very much happening. Whatever that judge does, it then gets appealed to the Court of Appeals that oversees those courts. So here for Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, that is the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. The vast majority of cases, something like 99% of cases, they end at the Court of Appeals, right? The Supreme Court is lazy. The Supreme Court only takes like 60 cases a year. Even Brett Kavanaugh says that that is a ridiculously low load, and he's right. So most of these cases are just ending at the circuit courts. And the circuit courts, therefore, get to make most of the law in the country. Even if a circuit court gets it wrong, it might not be a decade, even 20 years until the Supreme Court steps in to reverse it. The Supreme Court can take its sweet time. So this is how we get
just to be clear, you could have one set of laws essentially in the Fifth Circuit,
correct,
and another one in the Eighth Circuit or the Fourth Circuit.
Correct. And that is when the Supreme Court's supposed to step in. We call that a circuit split. But again, the Supreme Court has gotten kind of lazy or gun shy or something, and it hasn't been resolving those splits. So we have very different law in different parts of the country. And that is especially true when it comes to immigration law, because the Ninth Circuit oversees California, and it's very liberal, and the Fifth Circuit oversees Texas, and it's extremely conservative. So basically, migrants who come in through Texas have a much lower chance of being able to vindicate their rights under law, like the right to seek asylum and have a credible fear of persecution hearing if they come in through Texas than in California.
And we should say the reason why the Fifth Circuit, Texas, Louisiana,
Mississippi,
and Mississippi versus the circuit, the California circuit, is because the senators nominate from these states, nominate these people to the that court. And if they don't want, if they have a problem, or they suggest, I should say, to the White House then nominates those people. But if they have a problem with it, they withhold their blue slip. And of course, only Democrats now, when they're chairing the Judiciary Committee, recognize that tradition. When the Republicans come in, blue slips are no longer effective.
That's exactly right. For circuit court judges especially. And so when Trump came in, The Senate got rid of blue slips. Mitch McConnell was like, we're not doing this. We are stacking the courts of appeals, because Mitch McConnell, better than anyone, understands that you don't have to win elections if you can just capture the courts. They will do everything for you. And so McConnell held open, or directed Texas's senators to hold open seats on the Fifth Circuit under Obama. So when Trump came in, it wasn't just that some judges strategically retired, though they did. It was that there were vacancies awaiting Trump because Republican senators had used the blue slip process to keep those seats open and ensure that a Democratic president wouldn't be able to fill them. That's why today the Fifth Circuit has this lopsided majority of sort of, I call them judicial arsonists, judicial nihilists. They're a combination of Trump appointees and insane appointees of previous Republican presidents who have sort of banded together to be the vanguard of the new conservative right.
And I mean, it's likely, it seems to me, that if Donald Trump gets into office and has a seat or two available on the Supreme Court, the Fifth Circuit's going to have there's going to be a nominee from that circuit, right?
Yeah. So that's the other thing that's going on here. A lot of auditioning. The judges on the Fifth Circuit appointed by Trump all think they're going to be the next Supreme Court appointee under a Republican president, probably Trump 2.0. So we have people like Jim Ho, who is going out there doing this tour talking about how judge shopping is amazing. It's the best thing ever, that it's horrible that anyone would ever oppose it. He talks about abortion as this moral tragedy. He condemns like abortionists all the time. He talks about how liberals want to bring the woke constitution into effect, and we need like these brave conservative warriors for the judiciary to stop them. I mean, he's like a Fox News talking head. Similar thing with Andrew Oldham, similar thing with Kyle Duncan. These are the Trump appointees who go out there. They're the ones boycotting Columbia. They say they won't hire law students as clerks from Columbia because of the protests. They're the ones who go on TV, go to sort of student groups and shout at them and say things like, you know, you're all woke liberals. They are auditioning to get a seat under the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court might try to send these signals to them too subtly, in my view, that they should rein it in. But to them, that just proves they're doing a good job, because universally, I think at this point, like the thought leaders of the Republican legal right think that Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh, and Neil Gorsuch were all mistakes and that they need to do better next time.
Right. They all think of them as like suitors, essentially.
Squishes. That's right. Yeah.
And Souter was appointed, just for 90% of you who don't remember this, was appointed by George Herbert Walker Bush. And
was it a little too much of a New England conservative for them?
Too much of a New England conservative.
We should be clear that these people are not suitors, though. Like, you know,
right? No, exactly. It's the next model, and the next model comes out. They're suitors as far as these conservatives in Texas are concerned.
Yes,
but they're completely bat crap crazy on if we use just normal, legal theory as a baseline. We've just gone from, I mean, these guys at the Fifth Circuit are basically Marjorie Taylor Greene, as far as I'm concerned. But
Alito may be Marjorie Taylor Greene as well. Like, I know we'll get to that, but they already have. Like, you're saying, Mark, that, you know, some of these guys are Fox News judges. I saw, and I'm stealing this from somebody, I forget who tweeted it, but Alito's not a Fox News judge. He's a Newsmax judge with what, like, we're at that level already. It's just a question of more numbers on the Supreme Court who would be in lockstep with a guy like Alito, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right,
sorry,
before we get to Alito, let's talk about this other case out of Louisiana.
Well, I just wanted to briefly sort of wrap on the CFPB thing, if I can, because I think that's a really good point. So, like, what happens is it's these payday lenders who are challenging the CFPB because they want to put these extortionist loans out and collect all this interest and screw people over. So the housing industry, which is like not a bleeding heart industry, let's be clear, like housing people and bankers come into the Supreme Court and they're like, hey, we also don't really like the CFPB because sometimes it like fines us, but we just want to let you know that if you strike down the entire CFPB, and they told this to the Fifth Circuit too, but the Fifth Circuit didn't care. The CFPB actually provides what we call safe harbor protections for housing lenders and builders. So if you sort of follow these basic rules and you are sued and you're a housing lender, you can rely on the CFPB's protection to fight away that lawsuit, to fight away legal liability. If that is taken away, which is what would happen if the CFPB is struck down, lenders would not lend anymore, okay? Because they would be subject to endless litigation and liability for anything they do across all 50 states. There would be no federal umbrella protection. Lenders would stop lending, which means that builders would stop building, which means that both the loan and construction part of the housing industry would dry up entirely. The banking industry, of course, relies on that aspect of lending to keep its own assets going. So the banking industry would likely tip over into a collapse like 2008, which would set off almost certainly a global recession. This is not hypothetical. This is one of the key features of the CFPB that we don't talk about enough. It wasn't just protecting consumers from payday lenders and all that stuff. It was shoring up the industry so that it could have a set of rules that would prevent a collapse like '08. And so if Sam Alito and Neil Gorsuch, who are the two dissenters in this case, if they had gotten their way, if they had destroyed the CFPB, we would not be having a conversation right now. We would be running to our banks to withdraw as much money as possible to stash under our beds, because this case was quite literally a direct challenge to America's ability to maintain a functioning economy in 2024.
It's a good lesson too. If you have a cousin or a little brother who is a libertarian, ask them how we work that out between our own separate private judiciaries that would deal with lawsuits against lenders in that instance. But all right, so let's move to Louisiana. This case was about. And, it really makes you think like maybe there should be some type of thing like called pre-clearance with a Voting Rights Act where maybe people couldn't mess around with gerrymandering and what. But putting that aside, this is there was back in 2022 an Obama appointee for the district court of the Middle District of Louisiana ruled that there was an illegal racial gerrymander. And so that's where we were in 2022. Black voters in Louisiana make up something like, 40% of voters? And there was only 1 out of 6 or 1 out of congressional districts where they were a majority. So they were clearly something was going on there that diminished Black people's voting power.
So right. And so the Supreme Court famously then issued that decision last term that sort of revived the Voting Rights Act and said, actually, racial gerrymandering is still bad. And so the district court judge there was vindicated, and the Louisiana legislature was ordered to redraw its map. So the Louisiana legislature draws a map with a second district that has a near majority of Black people. So now you have a map that looks, significantly more like the racial breakdown of the state. You've got 2 districts that are likely to elect Black representatives. So what happens then? Well, a group of conservatives then go to court and say this new map, which is ostensibly fairer and compliant with the Voting Rights Act, is actually unconstitutional under the Equal Protection Clause because the new district is just too Black. There are too many Black people receiving too much representation in this new district, so we think it has to be struck down. They are lucky enough to draw a court, and we don't have to get into the details, but it's actually a 3-judge court that 2 of the judges are Trump appointees. And the 2 Trump appointees are essentially trolling the Supreme Court here. They step in and they strike down the map. And they say, you know what? This is just too much power for Black voters. We can't accept this. This is a race-based redistricting decision. And so even though we're less than a year out from the Supreme Court saying that these kind of districts are actually required by federal law, we're going to say that this one is unconstitutional. And everybody scrambles up to the Supreme Court to get an answer because, of course, elections in Louisiana are not that far away, and they sort of need to know what maps they're going to be using.
Now, my understanding is that part of the argument, and there was an Alabama case, right, that had basically supposedly made this moot on some level, that the Supreme Court had issued on. But my understanding is that the plaintiffs here were arguing that the districts were not compact enough. That one of the elements of redistricting is sort of just like a general principle, is that you want the districts to be as compact as possible, as opposed to, I guess there's one in Louisiana that sort of like is a thin one that runs almost like the entire length of the state in the middle, almost like it was like a spine in some way. And that was the basis of their argument. And that in shooting that down, the Supreme Court is opening the door for other types of like sort of gerrymander hijinks.
So compactness is something that the Supreme Court has called a traditional factor of redistricting, but it's not an iron law, because another factor that's key is something called communities of interest. So let's say that here's a sort of micro example. There's a big Caribbean community outside of DC in one particular part of Maryland, right? The way that they have organized their lives and businesses and whatever is not into a compact district, but they're placed in the same state senatorial district that looks a little funky because they're deemed a community of interest, and the state felt that they should elect a representative who could represent their interests, or a state senator. So that is sort of the other feature that's in tension with the compactness issue. And in this case, a big fight was, well, can you sort of collect Black communities in a district and say they're communities of interest and put them in a district that looks a little bit funky? Or is the district so weird looking and so contrived that it's obviously unconstitutional? And I think this district was very different from the one in Alabama that the Supreme Court struck down. Okay, the district in Alabama that was struck down, it was like this snake that went around and sucked up every Black community that it could, and was designed to prevent Black people from living anywhere else, so that it could just be this one deeply Black district and everybody else could be in their own lily white district. The Louisiana district was different. It did have a majority Black population. It did look a little bit funky. I think that the state legislature, and I don't really want to give it to them because these were sort of cynical Republicans, but I think they were trying to follow, for the most part, the court's order, the original court's order, which was that your districts are not giving Black people representation in the congressional delegation. You have to draw another one that will boost their representation. And so these are the two poles against which all redistricting law has to go through. And it's sometimes difficult to see if one is veering too far one way or the other. Does that make sense?
And they were also trying to, I think, protect the incumbents a little bit too. So
that's right, of course. And they basically decided, they said, Louisiana's Republicans said, well, we have to get rid of one Republican incumbent. We'll pick the one we like the least and screw them over with this district. And that's what they did. But the Supreme Court has also said that that's okay. So when this was appealed up to the Supreme Court, I actually wasn't surprised to see that the 6 conservatives stepped in to restore the original map, even though it had more Black representation, in part because they have been really big on this idea that courts shouldn't change election law shortly before an election, which includes primary elections. And so I think what was going on here was, this case is not over by any means, but they stepped in, I think, because they want to make it clear that if an election is even like 8 months away, the federal courts should not be messing with maps. They should not be messing with voting rules.
Okay. And is there any there's no poisony pill type of thing that's going to come back down the road as a way to further sort of disenfranchise people?
The whole thing is poison pills. It's a giant poison pill. Either the Supreme Court now uses that principle to block progressive decisions, say that a judge says that some absentee voting restrictions are unconstitutional. The Supreme Court's going to use the same rule to block that decision and say it's too close to an election. You can't make it easier for people to vote. And then this whole case is just a mess because, like I was saying, you've got this legitimate interest in boosting Black representation in Congress and boosting, the proportional representation of Black voters. But at the same time, you've got this concern about districts that are sort of contrived to ensure that only Black people live in them. And you've got to navigate between those two things. Republicans are really, really good at sort of scheming to make every district that's too black look like it's unconstitutional and make districts that are too white look like they're just fine.
If I'm in a Republican-dominated state, I'm just going to wait until we're 8 months out from an election to say, no more mail-in ballots, no more, we're closing half of the polling stations.
Exactly.
And then I know I'm protected, and I can do that every year.
Yep.
I can do that every cycle.
Back in the day, before
Right.
Shelby County, you couldn't. You had to run everything by the Justice Department, but now pre-clearance is over, so you can do whatever you want. And yes, the legislature can change the rules just before an election, but the judiciary can't step in to block them, even if they're patently unconstitutional.
Wonderful. Let's talk about Sam Alito. Back in the day when Scalia was still alive, we used to call Alito Scalito. And one of the hallmarks of Anthony Scalia was that he, particularly towards the end of his career, was writing his opinions more or less to sound like he cribbed them from right-wing talk radio.
Yes.
And it seems like Scalito is really, really worthy of the name at this point.
I would say that Sam Alito has always been worse than Scalia. Scalia had a period from like the 80s through the sort of mid-aughts when he had this strong judicial philosophy. It included things like deference to administrative agencies, by the way, that was coherent and didn't necessarily exclusively toe the Republican line and made him an interesting jurist to watch. I think starting around 2005, he started to sort of lose his mind or get brain poisoned by Fox News. And late stage Scalia was indeed an embarrassment. But he had that phase where he had a real philosophy. Sam Alito has never had a real judicial philosophy. His only philosophy is whatever Republicans want to do, they get to do. Whatever Democrats get to do, they can't. He has always been a partisan hack. I mean, by far, he has the most partisan voting record. And so I'm not surprised that he and his wife, Martha Ann, who, by the way, is a big anti-abortion advocate and very big in the sort of conservative Catholic circles in DC that the two of them run in, I wasn't surprised that they did this flag upside down thing. I think they were entirely aware that it was a symbol for Stop the Steal. I think both of them absolutely believe the 2020 election is stolen. And I think there's a direct link between those personal views at home and Alito's own judicial writings and decisions, which are consistently attempting to call into question the integrity of the 2020 election and will probably try to call into question the 2024 election as well.
I mean, you read the New York Times article on it, and it's unambiguous, as you say, Mark, right? This is involving a dispute that he allegedly had with one of his neighbors because they had a sign that was critical of Trump that had an expletive on it, and then he responded in this manner. But Dick Durbin is now saying, NBC News reporting today, that they're not going to take up the matter and look into it as in the Senate Judiciary Committee. Why does it stop here? Is it politicking? Is it an election year? Because there should have been even more robust probes into Clarence Thomas, and now we're not even going to look into this, even though we're talking about how democracy's on the ballot. It's pretty bad politics at a base level.
And I don't even need to ask, what if Ketanji Brown Jackson's husband did something similar to this? Republicans would actively march to her house with pitchforks. There's a huge double standard here. And I think it shows that even well over a year out from the Clarence Thomas bombshell reporting by ProPublica about his billionaire benefactors and donors and all that stuff, Senate Democrats are still not playing hardball at all when it comes to the judiciary.
They're not even playing softball.
They're not even playing. They're not playing. They're not playing at all. They just packed up their toys and went home. They are scared of these justices for no good reason, right? The Democratic base is not exactly a fan of Justice Alito or Justice Thomas, but senators are for some reason terrified of the repercussions of, say, calling them before the Senate Judiciary Committee, asking a few basic questions like, do you think the 2020 election was stolen? Or did you accept a huge amount of money to rule in favor of your best friend? They are, I think, not up for the job. They are not the men and women for this moment. It's specifically the men, people like Dick Durbin, I'll say. It's hopefully a lesson for future Democratic Senates, if they exist. Don't put moderate squishes who are into conciliation in charge of the Senate Judiciary Committee. This is about the worst place that Dick Durbin could be in this Senate. If someone like Sheldon Whitehouse were in that seat, it would be a lot different. But Democrats decided they wanted to be conciliatory, and so this is the path they've chosen, the path of doing nothing.
We should also say that there was a report yesterday that that Alito sold Bud Light stock as in the wake of the I guess the hullabaloo over Dylan Mulvaney. He sold his stock and bought Coors or something like,
yes.
By
the way, he should not be owning individual stocks, selling, whatever.
Right.
Like he and Roberts are the only ones who do that. The other ones have it in a blind trust. He and Roberts are the only ones who can be like, yes, Bud Light, they have a transgender spokeswoman on Instagram. Time for me to sell off this stock and buy some Coors. Like, the fact that that's even possible for a Supreme Court justice is in itself pretty insane. It
is amazing to me that we're not having hearings on this. I mean, it is so obvious from the reporting, and the hearings should just be like, we're just going to invite the reporters. We will invite the justices to come and defend themselves if they want. They won't come, but let's hear this story, because Clarence Thomas clearly basically said, I'm going to quit the court unless I get some type of financial support. And then all of a sudden he's introduced by Leonard Leo to a billionaire, and now they're best friends. That's a great story.
It's so real.
And I mean, romantic. I imagine, the Alito is probably not best friends with the billionaire, but there's a couple of billionaires who like him and, subsidizing his flagpoles or whatever it is. This is just, it is crazy how the Democrats, Dick Durbin in particular, and Leahy was the same, are refusing to acknowledge what's going on there. It's almost like it is the highest form of denial that I think could possibly exist. I mean, they're on the Judiciary Committee. That's what their job is.
I think that the dream of an impartial court that majestically dispenses equal justice to all is a narcotic, and these guys are still addicted to it. After all these years, they're still addicted, and it's gonna take something even bigger to shatter that. Honestly, if Bush v. Gore didn't shatter it, I don't really know what was. Maybe we just have to wait for a new generation that doesn't have the scales on their eyes. But I truly think that these senators have just grown up and built their identities around this notion that the Supreme Court is so majestic it can't be touched. And even as it corrupts itself and falls into disarray and shame, these senators are essentially propping it up through their inactions rather than launching real investigations that they have power under law to do.
I don't know what else there is to say, but I'd like 3 more Ketanji Brown Jacksons, please. And if we've got to expand the court, we expand the court. But is there anything, I mean, outside of a court expansion, the Congress theoretically, I mean, I highly unlikely, but could begin to narrow its jurisdiction.
And should. And, actually, Justice Jackson, you mentioned her. She's been writing about this since she joined the court. She's very, very strongly in favor of jurisdiction stripping, at least as a legal matter. She has written, when Congress tells the Article 3 judiciary to butt out, we have to. That is our obligation. And I think she's sending a not very subtle signal to Congress. Like, you think that the judiciary is overstepping? We'll start adding to your laws. By the way, the courts have no role in, assessing this law's legality or striking it down or intervening or whatever. I don't know whether the full court would accept that, but it's in the Constitution that Congress can jurisdiction strip. Like, it's right there. Constitution doesn't say we only have 9 justices. It doesn't put a number on it. It does say that Congress can limit the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. So it seems like it's maybe worth a shot if Congress ever gets its act together to pass major legislation again that's vulnerable to Republican attack at the Supreme Court. There has to be a line in there saying, by the way, the Supreme Court has no jurisdiction to review the constitutionality of this law. Otherwise, that law will be toast.
Mark Joseph Stern, senior writer at Slate. We'll put a link to your pieces on the cases we've talked about today. As always, a real pleasure. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Emma.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Mark.
All right, folks.
It just is also like, I mean, we've been talking, I think, over the past few months about the Democrats just contradicting themselves in basic core brand propositions that they had going into the election. The only one they haven't contradicted is abortion, but Biden was like, I'm going to bring respectability and calm back to the office and the rules-based international order. I mean, we don't need to go into that. And then, of course, it's the urgency of democracy being on the ballot. What better way to illustrate that urgency than to haul Sam Alito, who's an election denier allegedly, in front of the Congress or the Senate and question him about that very fact?
Look, Alito would not come, and neither would Thomas.
Then make the case.
But you bring in the reporters.
Yeah.
Who written these things, and you do investigations, and you just say, like, if you want to come defend yourself, do it. But if not, we're just going to lay this out and make the American public pay attention to this. The thing that's happening with, Thomas in particular is just so stunning, because the way that that people addressed. And I think like this was actually even with the Supreme Court when there was talk of court packing. Justices never had pensions early on. There was a problem because he couldn't get these justices to leave. And so I think it was around that time in the 30s or 40s when FDR was trying to do it. What they did is they sweetened the justices' pensions. And that's how they got some retirements. And what's happening now with Thomas is the opposite.
The reverse, right.
He was going to retire. I mean, all the reporting makes this clear. He was sending signals. I can't continue to do this. I'm looking at all my buddies or, whomever it is. They're making a lot of money and I need money.
And he values
and I can't afford to be a justice anymore. And so, I may go, and that will be bad for you guys. And then Leonard Leo is like, I'm on it.
Yeah.
Introduces him to a billionaire. Then all of a sudden, private school for his, his ward. His mother gets a house.
Leonard Leo's the one paying for it.
No, not Leonard Leo.
Sorry.
What's his face? Harlan Crow.
Harlan Crow. Apologies.
But Leonard Leo introduces him to Harlan Crow, and his buddy is also like a couple of vacations a year.
Nice fishing trips and stuff.
and this is only the stuff that we know about. Like, I have a feeling you're a billionaire. You'll figure out a way to provide largesse to, and really, if you're Thomas, it's like, okay, what do you want? Well, you want to be able to pay for your kids to go wherever they want. Ginny, of course, has probably an incredibly overpaid job, whatever right-wing institution she's working for this week. And you're like, what do you want for her? You want to go on a sweet vacation? I got you covered, my man.
Right.
It's like almost like being a professor at a well-paid professor at a nice college where it's like, oh, I got my health care, I got my gym membership, and I get 3 months off, and I can go wherever I want. Except for in this instance, I go by private jet, and I have a billionaire pay for me to go on fishing trips.
They're complete institutionalists, and it's just this rot that continues to make itself even more apparent and enable our backslide into just complete anti-democratic structures in this country.
The irony is, if you're an institutionalist, you're looking at this,
right?
And you're saying, I'm looking at the institution being. All you are is in complete denial about what's happening to the institution you profess to love.
Well, we've talked about this as it relates to lawyers who are maybe a few who have been in the profession for quite a while. There's a reticence to understanding that very notion because lawyers are unimpeachable by design. They go through everything by reason. And so I think there's just an older class of liberal that is never going to acknowledge it until the new generation takes hold.
I agree. I mean, it's almost like the Catholic Church, right? It's like we can't believe this is actually going on. I'm going to pretend like it's not. I'm not going to pretend like it's not. And
right. Well, they treat them like priests too. So I
yeah,
mean, that's
exactly. Dick Durbin superfan on the I am sigh. To be a Dick Durbin superfan is to forever be swinging from despair to slightly happier. All right, folks, it's your support that makes this show possible. If you can find a daily show that provides for you the complete, dry, weedy, non-sexy, important information about how
really
your
selling
government
it,
is
huh?
work. And well, I mean, look, everybody's got their core brand proposition. We stuck out a niche that who else would fulfill? No one would go into this business now doing what we're doing. Why would they?
Right.
It's a recipe for disaster. But you can support this endeavor by going to jointhemajorityreport.com, becoming a sustaining member. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercials, but you also get the fun half. You can IM us through the fun half. And, maybe in 20 years, we have members who are so excited to get that 20th anniversary merch that we have now, still available at our shop.Majority Report Radio. Maybe 20 years from now, you can be one of those people who's like, I've been listening to the show for 40 years. They literally wheel Sam out on a gurney and just listen to him gurgle. And that's what... I
don't like that.
Hopefully, I won't be doing that in 20 years. But...
ASMR gurgling.
Exactly. Emma's going to go, now for Sam's Minute.
Yeah, you know what people love to hear? Old man noises. Like guttural burps.
Thank you for the $5 super chat.
Poggers. Yeah, there it is. Don't forget your 40th anniversary baseball hat.
I mean, what's scary is that this is fairly indistinguishable from our Biden impression as a collective group. Yeah.
Well, that's where I'll be. Of course, the future of the country won't be resting on my shoulders. So that'll
be nice.
Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea.
Close.
You've been doing it for
I get it.
14 years. It's tough to. Fair trade coffee and hot chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Justcoffee.coop. If you drink coffee and you drink it at home, you're not going to do better than Just Coffee, both for taste and for fair tradeness. It's a co-op, for gosh sakes. And they really treat their suppliers well. Emma.
ESPN, we gave a preview of the NBA Conference Finals and the Eastern Conference Final for the NHL because the Game 7 was last night. The Oilers advanced, and we talked about that. We also gave our thoughts on the Harrison Butker situation and did a little dive into his sect of Catholicism, which is getting kind of more attention in the media because Republicans are outraged that there was a memo at the FBI investigating it, but it's those exact people that you were talking about, Matt, who think that the current pope is the Antichrist and that basically Catholicism has become too liberal.
I didn't know that was a sect of Catholicism because that's frankly a lot of Catholics.
Well, they call themselves they're the traditional Latin Mass people, and he's a part of that.
Right, yeah.
It's not Opus Dei, is it?
It's not. It's not. But it is an extremist sect that the FBI was basically saying. I mean, yes, right.
Alito.
Yes,
Alito. You know who else was a member of Opus Dei? Was Novak.
Well, I'm about to tell you also crazy stuff. Who spoke at the at that same college before Harrison Butker, and now Butker's doing these events with Josh Hawley, was Leonard Leo.
Oh, yes, I've heard that too.
So we talked a little bit about that. I think this guy, this kicker for the Chiefs, might have some broad political aspirations. But youtube.com/ESPN.
We're listening to kickers now?
I mean, yeah, please.
The hell?
I love those old videos they've unearthed of Mahomes saying, even before all this, I don't talk to him all season. And so, another reason Mahomes actually rocks. But the Chiefs have had a lot of media attention lately. Anyway, youtube.com/ESPN show.
Tonight, 7 p.m., Left Reckoning, Ryan Zickraff talking about rural America and the way it is perceived by, say, elites in media, particularly maybe the Washington Post writers, sort of shocked that the people in the rural America are misled, and also positively reviewing J.D. Vance's book. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning. Tonight, come watch us.
Ramona Frankenstein on the I am Sam, you're really selling the show. Oh, our show? It's boring. Give us money. Full disclosure, it worked on me, so I guess I'm the fool. There you go. Kowalski from Nebraska, non-sexy in those glasses, Sam? Fake news. All right, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Oh, no.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Danner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. I'm sorry, we were freaking out here. I got that New York alert thing on my phone,
right?
With the emails, and I just happened to open up